Hi, I'm Rose, and you're listening to the Sovereign Soul podcast. I support awakening souls live beyond their ego and limitations so that they can know true freedom. I cover a lot of topics, and I would say the first 10 episodes were pretty deep dive into planetary conditions and the spiritual realm and grid lying around Earth, and more conversation about your soul, actually, I want to say after this life, but essentially it's very much in this life. To know true freedom, you need to know yourself. That is what gives us the freedom. That is what self-actualization is, enlightenment. It's to know yourself. And the beauty of knowing yourself is that you will know others, because we actually are all the same at the core. And with an ego implant, we have a limited amount of ways that we can play out our drama. So we all have a story, we've all had stuff happen to us, but the way that that plays out is a handful of ways. But that freedom that I speak about, that soul sovereignty, that need to actually know yourself, to take that full responsibility for yourself, that is very much human work based. It's about growing in enormous amounts of self-awareness, brutal self-honesty. And I do say brutal because, my God, it's hard to realize that we've been lying to ourselves, or the ways in which we limit ourselves because we're too afraid to see the truth. And that's also a reflection of the world outside of us. We will hide from really ugly, nasty truth just because we don't want to believe that something so yucky could exist. And in us, though, generally, I would have to say the yucky isn't as yucky as we think when we go there, although it feels that it is as yucky as the worst evil that we can see outside of us. So the human part of us, that's the work we hear in a human body. And so how do we embrace that? How do we really make this experience less tormenting and more freeing? So soul freedom is not something that just comes in a blink or in a moment. My healing journey, I would say, actively started when I was probably around 21 years old, and then maybe very consciously at around 22 years old. I think I've mentioned that. And I was plugging away at this personal growth thing like there was no tomorrow for 17 years. There was no getting off the bus or the train or whatever you want to call it. It, stops at stations sometimes, but actually you're always going to be on this journey. And I only really got massive transformation 10 years ago, like I've explained, after I had this humongous epiphany on personal responsibility and really started embodying that. And I too was doing daily meditation, daily energy healing practice on myself, and then blessed at the end of that year, I had a Kundalini awakening and a spiritual awakening. And that just went into full-blown soul healing. So that's like about 10 years ago. So we add that all up, it's approximately 26, 27 years of being actively on the healing train. Now, the reason why I tell you that is that so often when people embark on personal growth journey, they are very attached to a personal growth destination. And this can make one feel quite despondent, because quite often you're looking to feel a certain way. There's something you're craving from the experience and you think you're meant to arrive at it. And when you don't, there's a feeling of defeat and deflation. And honestly, we are here to have a human experience, and having a human experience is not meant to be linear. That's not how anything works. If anyone listening to this has listened to my first few episodes as opposed to this episode, just of this podcast alone of creation and work, you can see probably a massive difference in my own delivery. It's a work in progress, and it's going to constantly grow and develop as I grow and develop with this body of work, as is my blog, as is my social media stuff, and as is my relationship with my children. So if you have to take your own life and look at anything, there is nothing that is linear. We have children, our children grow, our interactions with them change, the way we relate to one another changes, they grow up. So you're no longer dealing with children, you're dealing with equals and adults. So these are constant progressions, just as our own growth journey is a constant progression. And that is something we need to really understand. So if we are struggling, if we are hitting our head against a wall, or we feel like we're hitting our head against a wall, we've got to be more realistic in what we're expecting from the journey. The work is always going to sit on your shoulders. That's just the way it goes. And I did speak very deeply in other episodes about how important it is to claim your own soul in order to do that deep healing, to get back to that inner freedom, to actually self-actualize, to know yourself, to awaken to the human experience so that you can transcend the ego. You don't want to transcend the human experience, the connections we have, the laughter we have, the joy we have, the different experiences that we have with our senses, with all sorts of things. That's why we're here. We're here to have a human experience. So I don't believe we're meant to transcend human stuff. I think we're meant to transcend the way we relate to it. I don't think that enlightenment and self-actualization is supposed to take us away from it. If anything, it's supposed to move you more into it. That's how I see it anyway. I understand wanting to not suffer. There's an amazing quote, Buddha, and it says, pain is inevitable, but to suffer is a choice. So it's how we relate to the things that we are going through. Perspective. Perspective is what makes us suffer or allows us to surrender and flow with something. Surrender and flow are other topics that I talk about a lot. So I wrote a little ebook called The Lessons of Spiritual Awakening. And if you are interested, just contact me. I'd happily send you a copy. I've got loads of free resources on all of the work that I teach. I have been accumulating and making for years and years and years, 10 years in fact. So I'm always very happy to share resources. And in that, I explain these different elements that we need to master. And mastery is a journey. It's practice, 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 practice. And there's always going to be another layer. So growth isn't meant to stop, because if we stop, we go nowhere. And so understand that the non-linear is the way of life, it's like universal law. So don't expect your journey to be linear. Don't expect it to arrive anywhere. Just learn to embrace all the different ins and outs of it. Okay, I will see you in the next one.